I'll start briefly with a statement. First of all, everyone at U of L Health wants to thank our partners in fire, EMS, as well as our police departments who responded to this tragedy. They went above and beyond the call of duty. Although we partner with them every single day, it is always a reminder when something like this happens, how many people really respond to help the members of our community, and we are proud to be a part of that from U of L Health. So from all of us here to all of them, thank you very much for that. We're still caring for some of the individuals that came in from this tragedy. We still have 2 folks in the hospital that are currently in critical condition. Over the course of the evening, we treated around 15 across the different parts of our healthcare system from the incident itself, as well as also treating some folks that responded to smoke inhalation or other healthcare problems that were exacerbated by this. This is obviously a huge tragedy for our community. UPS is a wonderful partner in our community, not just here with us at U of L Health, but for everyone. And while we are a city that knows each other very well. So our hearts go out to our friends and colleagues at UPS, as well as to the other businesses, to the airport, and to all of those that were affected yesterday. So with that, I'm happy to answer as many questions as I can. My only reminder to the folks is we do still have patients in the hospital. I won't be able to give you all particulars around their care, but I'm happy to offer general answers if you have any, or any to your questions if you have any.
Could you give us a description of the range of injuries that you may have seen?
Yeah, so we've seen burns, obviously based upon the fire, and we've seen those from being very severe to minor. We've seen blast injuries from the explosion itself. We've also seen some shrapnel injuries where flying pieces of debris have hit either bystanders or people in relatively close proximity to the accident when it occurred. So really a gamut of that, as well as conditions that were exacerbated from the smoke and all of the other things that came into the hospital that were treated.
What comes next for the 2 patients? I know how far you can go into the details, but if you could say the likelihood to survive, are you able to say that?
Yeah, I can't really tell you the likelihood of survival of the patients. They're both in critical condition right now. Both are very sick, so we're still working on treating them from their injuries from that standpoint. Yeah, so Code Yellow is our internal term for our disaster preparedness. So we actually drill very consistently, both with the local EMS and the local police, as well as internally for management of disasters, since we are the trauma response hospital for the area and the region. That allows us to mobilize all of our staff. And so, for example, last evening we were able to keep staff on premises or call staff in case we had a number of casualties. Particularly early on, we didn't know the type of airplane that might have crashed, and so, thinking worst case scenario, if it was a massive passenger airplane, you can talk hundreds and hundreds of casualties. And so we would stand up all of our capabilities in order to treat those patients, as well as work with the local providers to say, hey, other hospitals can help, and how can we support those hospitals with knowledge as well as other help that we can provide.
Can you clarify the 15 people you treated? Does that include the 2 that are critical, or you treated 15 less than 15?
That includes the 2 that are still in critical condition.
Was this an all-hands-on-deck situation based on preliminary information following news that a plane had crashed?
Absolutely. So when something like this occurs and you really don't know the extent of the injuries, you always think worst case scenario. So for this, we brought in everything that we possibly could to the hospital and the healthcare system at large. We placed all of our hospitals on standby for disaster alerts so that we could be able to afford whatever care was needed. And then as the night progressed and we saw that there were fewer and fewer casualties coming in, we were able to kind of draw that down a bit and get back to normal operations.
What kind of manpower does it take to sustain an operation like this?
It's an immense amount of manpower. We had hundreds of people, not just at our hospital, but across the healthcare system that were back in trying to work. And that goes from everything from supply chain. We had warehouse staff that were actually in relative proximity to the accident that occurred, that were working on developing supplies. And then we had further folks that were brought into other outside healthcare organizations, as well as our own, in order to try and say, hey, if we couldn't take care of somebody, where would we send them next? And we could stand up those capabilities, for example, at Jewish Hospital, at South Hospital, and at Mary and Elizabeth.
Can you talk
Yeah, I can't tell you particulars because we have so few number of patients in the hospital. I can't tell you particularly about their injuries, but they're severe at this time.
What does it say about the staff here that you all were able to respond in such a way that you felt that you got the best case scenario out of the worst case scenario?
Yeah, so our staff is phenomenal. I think it talks to the level and dedication of our staff. Even before we declared the disaster alert, when people started seeing this on social media or the news and we didn't know what was occurring, we had folks really starting to come back in and we're staging. They said, I'm in the parking lot in my car, call if you need me. I'm in the cafeteria, I came back into work. And I think that just talks to the dedication of the people here at U of L Health. Like, this is what we do. This is why we're here. We're here to serve the community. It's a role that we take very seriously and we're honored to be a part of.
Were there any precautions you had to take at the hospital because of the proximity to where this occurred and that shelter in place?
Yeah, so we actually were in a shelter in place for a while, so we actually made all staff and anyone leaving or entering the building stay put until we could get a better understanding of what was going on. Additionally to that, we were working with FAA for our own helicopter transports to make sure that, what did we need to do as far as managing the helicopter transports in. And then the other part was keeping it open depending on the number of ambulance transports we might have. It's keeping the routes open to allow that access so they weren't clogged down with other people coming into the hospital, cars, things like that.
What are the conversations like, if any, between U of L and the FAA and the particularly with the patients who are needing to be released from the hospital?
Yeah, so it actually is a great partnership with Louisville Metro. They kind of ran most of the emergency preparedness discussions, as well as some at the state level, and being able to give us the information back and forth on what could and couldn't occur at the hospital. Additionally with that, particularly with the National Transportation Safety Board, we've been in contact with them for most of the evening, trying to connect them with the patients so they can understand who was here, who might have been at the scene, and who they may have to discuss or interview as they examine this accident.
They can't speak for other hospitals, but do you know if there were patients taken to other hospitals?
I don't know currently if there are patients taken to other hospitals besides ours, but it wouldn't surprise me, particularly with the amount of smoke in the other hospitals. Again, the other hospitals in the area are excellent as well, and so I'm sure they were able to take care of those folks as they came in. Yeah, so we actually do massive, what we call massive disaster drills at least once a year, and we actually just had one about a month and a half ago that was involving a quote-unquote plane crash at the airport. And so we had drilled for this about 4 to 6 weeks prior, and we were able to kind of work through our own internal processes. Luckily, we didn't have to activate all of those based on the number of people that came in last night, but it's an example of what we do. Internally, we do this about once a quarter, and some of those are simple paper exercises. Others involve much more substantial areas where we look at maybe throughput in the emergency department or in the operating room, depending on what's coming through the door.
How important is it to triage people out, first responders triage blood and feel? How important is that for keeping your contact?
Yeah, so luckily with the number of casualties coming last night, triage was not a factor. We were able to manage and take care of anyone that would come to us. But I don't think you can overstate the importance of, for example, decontamination and triage at the scene. There was a massive amount of jet fuel that was spilled in the area, so they were taking care of those patients, cleaning them, making sure they're decontaminated before they ever got to us. Yeah, I can't give you specifics around the treatments. I can't give you specifics about the patients. I can give you in general. If I look at generalities, patients that suffer blast injuries, the biggest problem we have with blast injuries is it's basically like a car accident, is that multiple areas can be injured all at the same time. You contrast that, for example, from a shrapnel injury, which would be more like a bullet wound or a stab wound, where you can identify, what's actually injured based upon some external signs that you see. Burns are obviously a completely different beast. Burns can take a long time for care. They usually take a lot of skin grafting and other things. Luckily, we are an ABA burn center. We're one of the few in the country that are an ABA burn center. And so we've got the resources to manage some of these larger burns that might come in, be that in this area or in other accidents that we may have. So we do have those capabilities, but it can be a very long time depending on how severely someone might be burned or what's going on with them. Sure. Thank you all very much. I appreciate it.